Welcome, guys. Welcome everybody back to another minEASE afternoon. We're going to go over another topic this afternoon. Let me introduce myself first. Having noticed after editing these videos and posting them on YouTube, I don't think I've said my name once in the entire time. So my name is Mike Martinez, work at the Maricopa County School Superintendent's Office. I have been here long enough I have a number for when I retire. That's really kind of all you need to know. What we're going to cover today is going to cover the setup of email alerts and export jobs. Export jobs has become sort of a new thing. We've had more and more districts asking us for file exports from our system out to whatever third-party appliance they happen to use. So we're going to cover that as well as some setup. There will be some definite nerd stuff in there today, and it's kind of going to be kind of intermingled with everything else just because it kind of fits into the flow. So if you see something that's a little bit out of your main subject area, don't worry about it. We're gonna quickly move on to the next thing. But for those any IT people happen to be watching, or any people hosted outside of Maricopa happen to be watching, it'll give you a little bit of background as to how the system processes this stuff in the back end. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and get started here. Everyone should be able to see my Infinite Vision screens. Give me a thumbs up if you can see it. All right, good, awesome. All right, so in Infinite Visions, the email alerts setup comes with the core product. There's no separate license for it or anything like that. All you need is a mail server, which everybody already has access to because you send email as part of your job. But to set it up, the first thing that needs to be done for email alerts is in security, and someone has to have access to security. If you don't have access, find somebody that does. They'll be able to set a lot of this stuff up for you. So I'm going to open up security. In workflow configuration, and about halfway down here, you're going to see a section called email settings. So we're going to go into the email settings. And here's your email settings. So I'm going to kind of zoom in here so you can see this a little bit better. You guys still see that? Thumbs? Yep. All right, cool. All right, so first of all, you're going to put in your email server IP address. If you don't know this, I guarantee someone at your district does. If you're hosted by Maricopa County, it's going to be the same for everybody. This is the Maricopa County mail server. If your district maybe uses Gmail or Google, there's a Google server you can put in there. But for the most part, everything for all the county people, they're going to be on maricopa.gov. They send their email address. This is the default send from address for all email alerts and all email items within Infinite Vision. So whether you set up email direct deposit receipts, email reports, things like that out of Infinite Visions, the sender email address is the default sender email for that. I highly recommend that whatever sender email address you put in there, that somebody has access to monitor that inbox. And the reason for that is if it sends an email and it bounces back, maybe there's a bad address or it gets rejected for some reason, you have someone that's able to go in there and say, oh, look, this email didn't go through. It becomes especially important when you email things out like POs, or you email reports. So like, hey, here's your information. And if it bounces back, you can go in there and see, I got to bounce back. There's something going on here. So make sure you have a valid sender email address. Some people are tempted to use the old school do not reply at whatever district name they happen to be. Try not to use that simply because it's easier to have something you go in there and you can kind of manage. You'll want to turn on the box that says use SMT mail for email features. That's going to be required. So once you have that box on, email is active for Infinite Vision. So make sure you turn that on. If you have a mail server that requires authentication, you will need to fill out this middle section here. Most servers that are internally located do not have to worry about this. Ask your IT people. For all the county people, you do not need, there's no authentication information you need to put in there, so just ignore it. Next, the notification settings. These are the dates and the times for which your email alerts will run, and this only affects the email alerts. It doesn't affect the ability to email at all. So your direct deposits will go out, your reports will go out, all that stuff goes out just fine. But your email alerts will run in this particular setup. It will run Monday through Friday, starting at 8:10 a.m. and ending at 6 o'clock at night. Email alerts run every 5 minutes within that increment window. So every 5 minutes, it will go through and says, the system will say, is there any emails that need to go out? And then 5 minutes later, it checks again. Every email that goes. So your first blitz of emails in the morning is always going to come at whatever the start time happens to be. So when you come in the morning, and you notice you have a whole bunch of email alerts, well, that's when it kicks off. If you have a day that's not selected, it doesn't mean that that alert, that items done that day will be missed. It just means that they won't, the alert for it won't go out until the next day. So if anything happened on Saturday and Sunday, maybe an employee went into the portal and changed their direct deposit information, or an employee went in and did something, or someone worked over on Saturday and put in a requisition, things like that, you will still get that alert. It just won't go out until Monday morning. So don't worry, you'll never miss anything. So as long as you have those settings in there. So usually this will be your start of your business day. 8:10 is kind of an oddball time. I'd probably put like 7 o'clock in the morning until 6 o'clock at night. So just make sure you have a time range in there. If you don't, it kind of messes things up. Once you have these settings configured, the next thing you need to do is you'll go up to Actions, and there's an option for Create Alert Job.
Mike?
You have to do this.
Mike?
Yes.
Sorry to stop you. We've got a question from somebody.
Sure.
They want to know how to stop an email alert from prior fiscal year. I'm assuming you're going to go over that? I
will go over that. Don't worry about that.
Okay.
All right. Good. I see that, Tiffany. Thanks for pointing that out. It's like on the far side of my screen. So sometimes if I mischat things, Tracy, go ahead and yell out. The Create Alert Job is required if you want to run email alerts. Without that alert job, nothing runs. If you don't know if it's created, you can go in there and create it again. Running this process multiple times is not going to hurt anything, but not running it at all will definitely hurt anything if you want to run email alerts. So don't worry about that. Make sure you hit the Create Alert Job. The test email, after you set this up for the first time, make sure you send yourself a test email just to make sure things work. Because you've looked at it and say, oh yeah, everything's good to go. No, I'm going to go in Actions, and I will do a test email. And I'm going to send it to myself. I'm already in there. And it's just going to say test subject and send. And what it will do is it will send a test email as if it were an email report that you're sending. That way you can just make sure that it goes through. So there's nothing wonky set up with your configuration. And it will tell you message test was successful. So once you get that, you're good to go. And then you're all configured to use email within Infinite Visions. Now I'm going to switch over to some nerd stuff here really quick and kind of answer Tiffany's question about the email alert job. For you IT people, if you're looking at the SQL server, your email alert job is going to be under your SQL server agent and jobs. And there is an email alert job in here, and it's going to be for whatever fiscal year you happen to be in. So if I was Agrafria in 2021, here's my email alert job. There is no way in the system to remove these. So even though you're done with the fiscal year, and if you can go in there and you could turn off every single email alert for that fiscal year, the email alert job still continues to run in the background on the SQL server until someone goes in there and deletes it. Good thing is, if you have access to this, you can go in here, right click on the one you want to get rid of and hit delete, and it will stop that job from ever running again. So right now, it's a weird time of year where you really kind of have to worry about email alerts coming out of 2 years, because you have people that are still processing stuff in 1920, and you have people that are processing stuff in 2021. So you want to keep those alerts running. However, after you're done with the AFR and you're kind of done with anything that you want to do with the prior fiscal year, we recommend going in here and removing the alert job for the old year. For those districts hosted with the county, we will do that for you, so you don't have to worry about that after the AFR has been filed and fund balances have been rolled. So we kind of handle that for you. Other than that, there's no way in the application to remove an alert job. All right. Once you have the alert job set up and you have the email set up and you tested it and make sure everything works, next thing to do is to go in through the email alerts and jobs and just see what kind of items you want to use. There are a ton in here, and they kind of add new ones. It seems like every major release, there usually a handful of them. Some of them are super useful, and some of them you can't imagine ever having to use in your life. So go into email alerts and jobs. In here, setup's kind of saying, you see the grid and see all these names of these email alerts. Here's the thing. These things are sorted in alphabetical order. So if you know the name of the email alert that you are looking for, it makes it easy to find. However, I found that the number of people that actually know the name of the alert they are looking for is exactly 0. So here's what you can do. Go into the SQL statement column, and I'm going to click sort ascending. And what this will do is that it will sort all of the email alerts kind of by category. And let me kind of show you what I'm talking about here. You kind of have to look in here. So I'm gonna scoot on down here. So when you look at the SQL statements, look at these first two capital letters, AP. So this is an accounts payable alert. Go down, GL, these are general ledger alerts. HP are PARs, HR is HR. Let's scroll down a little bit more. Excuse me here. Anything PO has to do with the portal. So these are portal items, things like employee self-service, that they go out, like the direct deposit changes, the employee profile changes, PR for payroll. That's it. So if you're sorting it by categories, like I know it's a payroll, that's just a payroll email alert. This is a quick way where you can kind of sort it if you don't know the name of it. Otherwise, you just kind of have to look through everything, and it's just horribly, horribly organized. Thanks, Tyler, for that. All right. So assuming you find the alert you have, and I'm just going to pick one up here. Let me scroll up to the top, and we find. Let's go into purchase order revisions. Okay, let's take a look. So this is a generic purchase order revisions. It's a generic email alert. And what it's going to do is you have to look, first of all, is this alert active? If this box is not checked, this alert will never run, no matter what you think you may be going on. This is an issue we ran into last week. Someone had was not getting an email alert for employee contacts, which was a reminder on something that was a termination wizard. We were talking about the termination wizard. The employee contact for that did not go out because that particular email alert was not active. So make sure it's active. Make sure you have the frequency. How often do you want this particular email alert to run? By default, everything run once a day, which means it will run first thing in the morning. Once it hits that time frame that you have in the email settings, it kicks off first thing in the morning. So this will run once a day. You can change this depending on your particular business needs at your school district and what you desire to see. For example, if you have items that you only want to see once a month, you can set it to once a month, and at the first of each month, you will get an email alert containing those particular items. If you want it to run every couple of hours, like every 4 hours or something like that, you can change it so it runs every 4 hours. So it's entirely up to you. Be careful when you tweak these around, because you don't want to send out so many alerts that people just become numb to the fact that they're getting email alerts. I can tell you by personal experience, the more emails I get, the less likely I am to read any of them. So just make sure that you're very kind of judicious about how many email alerts and how often you're sending these out. Looking down here, some of the other information here, the email address information. So if this email alert goes to a particular person or a particular group of people, you can just put an email address in here that sort of CCs that person on anything that happens. So for this particular, if there's a purchase order revision, maybe you want whoever manages all your purchase orders in the district office, whoever's managing purchasing, whoever's managing finance, maybe you want a copy and say, hey, anytime someone does a revision, I want to get an email on that. You can put your email address in there, and then anytime a person does a revision, you're going to get an email that someone did a revision. And if you want to look up that information, feel free to go ahead and do that. You don't need it for everything. Most of the email alerts will tell you right into the description where that email alert goes. So you may not need it, but it really depends on what you're going to need at your district. The where clause, unless the description says to use the where clause for that email alert, just leave it blank. You can only mess stuff up. You can say it won't be harmful, it just won't work. So leave it blank unless it specifically tells you. And then the additional email text, this is one that we would recommend to use where you put in sort of the fiscal year that you're getting this alert from. So right here is my additional email text. I'm going to put FY 2021. That way, in situations where you have multiple fiscal years that are running at the same time, you get notification and they'll be able to see on that email alert what year that came from. And it happens every time a year, around this time of year, what happens is you have people that are running POs and requisitions out of 2 years at the same time. So you have someone who gets, hey, you have recs to approve in FY20, and then you get another email address, email that says you have recs to approve in FY21. If you don't put that note in there, they look absolutely identical, and the person will just think they got a duplicate email. So make sure you kind of put that in there, and that's just a cue to who's ever getting these emails so they know what's going on. That is, in general, that is the basic use of some of the setup for the email alerts. I want to take a look at some of the specialized email alerts that you can kind of do some tweaking on. So let's go into the bank account balance below threshold. And this is one of the few email alerts where you actually see a where clause. So if I'm looking at the description, send an email to a designated person or group when the balance of a bank account falls below X. So what you would do is you would put in your email address, and then you will put your threshold for the bank account. So if you have like an auxiliary fund or something that you're managing and you're having someone manage that through here, and you want to be tracking when that cash balance drops below a certain dollar amount and just have it email you, obviously you should probably be looking at it anyway. But if you need that sort of tickler or that sort of tracker just tells you this is when it happened, that's when you kind of put in this is the situation where you put in the where clause. So maybe it's not $5,000. Maybe I say, I want to see it's below $10,000, and I'm going to send it to myself. And then I would, of course, make it active and save it. And that's kind of a situation where we see that where clause come into play. There's only about 4 or 5 email alerts in Infinite Visions that use the where clause, but they will tell you right up front, and they're by default, they have something in there already for you. Another item I want to look at, I'm going to scroll down here, is this one I believe came out with the Q2 or the Q1 update. And this is the employee direct deposit change that has been submitted. If you remember last year, we had a lot of issues where employees were getting scammed because they submitted to payroll or HR that there was a direct deposit change, and they changed their ACH and their direct deposit information. So to help kind of combat some of that stuff, Tyler implemented this email alert, which, to be, in my humble opinion, should probably have been there the whole time. But what it does is anytime an employee submits a direct deposit information via the employee self-service portal, the iVisions portal, the employee will get an email to their email address saying, you submitted a direct deposit change. Now, here's the interesting thing for this. It is automatically turned on. You cannot turn off this alert. It is by default on, and as long as you are running email at your district, this email will always run no matter what. You don't even have an option to turn it off. So I thought that was kind of interesting. There's about 2 or 3 email alerts in Infinite Visions that do that. That do not allow you to turn, and those are usually all are security features. I think one is the employee profile changes, the other one is the direct deposit information. So that stuff is on all the time. Now, the interesting thing about this is look at the frequency of this particular email alert. By default, it runs once a day, so first thing in the morning. So I, as an employee, don't want to wait till tomorrow to find out if you submitted a direct deposit email change to me sometime after 8 o'clock. So it's 8:10, all the email alerts set off. 8:11, I go and someone goes in and makes a direct deposit change on mine. The system, the way it's set up right now, I have to wait till 8:10 the next morning to be notified that my direct deposit was changed. That's too far in the future as far as I'm concerned. So I'm going to change this to every 2 hours. So every 2 hours, this alert is going to run. So if there's any direct deposit changes submitted by employees within every 2 hours of the day, it's going to send out an email alert. So make sure this is one of those things that I would recommend going into tweak just for safety of your employees. And it's kind of nice because if I submit a change, I really want to be notified relatively quickly how that changes or that change was submitted or how quickly that change is going to take effect. So put that in there. I would go ahead and make that change. That's one of my recommendations that I was giving you. Well, yeah. Okay. Let me find another one here. Other items, useful alerts that I would use, employee expiring certificates. If you are truly using the certificate features within Infinite Visions, I would recommend using the employee's expiring certificates. One thing that you don't want is you don't want to get to that point where you're trying to verify that someone has their education or has a valid certificate on file. This will send out an email to the employee saying, your certificate is about to expire. That way they can come out to the district and say, hey, here's my renewal of my certificate, or I went back and got my certification and things like that. Make sure these employee certificates, probably one of the nicer little emails I sent out that are employee centric. So trying to take some of the burden off of your HR people who has to manage some of these HR certificates. Put that in there, put more power into the employees and make sure, hey, according to the information we have, your stuff is starting to expire. Whether that's true or not, at least you're putting it out to employees so that they can come to you and get that corrected. Let's scroll back up here. The other thing, all right. So the next biggest email alert that's going to be in here, purchase requisitions to approve. If you use remote requisitions at your district and you are not using this email alert, first of all, take out your hand and slap yourself. That's really what you need to do at this point. This is one of those things that I would most definitely say is required if you're doing any sort of remote requisitioning. So if you open this up, there's not a whole lot of setup to it. What it's going to do is it's going to run once a day and say, hey, do you have any recs that are in your queue to require? What is the turnaround time from the moment someone creates a requisition and sends it off for approval? What is the turnaround time for someone to go back and say, hey, this is approved, this is approved, this is approved? For some districts, it's way too long. Make sure you have this alert on just so you can have that sort of information and again, you're empowering employees to take action on their own behalf. So put that in there, helps sort of tighten up the timeline that you have for a lot of this. All right, so that is email alerts in a nutshell. Relatively simple. There are a couple of gotchas. I'll kind of go over that in a little bit here. Since there's no questions on that, let's go ahead and work in the export jobs. That's the fun part. So here's the thing that's kind of really gotten taken off recently. We probably have 6, 7 districts right now that are using export jobs. Some of them are using multiple export jobs. If your district has a contract with companies, say AlloView, Talented, a couple others, there are people that help manage or help look at your data, do reporting on, do whatever they need to do, professional development type thing. And we've been working a lot with Queen Creek lately on this, and they have a number of files that are going out to get processed. What you can do is you could set up in Infinite Visions, you can set up a report that will automatically create a file and then send it over to whoever you need it to go to electronically without any user intervention at all. It means you don't have to do anything. And it's relatively easy to set up. There are some IT things in here. So we're gonna get into some real nerd stuff here, so I apologize, but we'll help you set it up. All right, so I'm gonna cancel out of here and I'm gonna close, I'm gonna go back to the main menu. So you wanna set up an email export. If you have InfoLink, it makes this exceptionally easy to do. All you need to do is you need to define an InfoLink report. So I am going to go into InfoLink and we're going to create a test report just so we can play around with. Reporting tool. And InfoLink. All right, so I'm going to create a new InfoLink report here. And I'm going to call it file export 1. Why not? And just for test sakes, I am going to do, let's do purchasing and payables. And I'm going to add a field. Let's take a look at vendors. And let's go 1099 names. Why the heck not? All right, so this is very basic InfoLink report. All it is just a generation of vendor names that you have in the system. I will change it. Let's go in here, fields, and archive, or is it active? Do they have an active box in here? Bet you it's active. There it is. Is active equals. All right, so I'm just going to look at active vendors. That's my basic InfoLink report. If you're interested in an InfoLink session, let me know. Send an email, mike.martinez@maricopa.gov or fss.maricopa.gov, and maybe we can put one together for you. Create the InfoLink report. All right. Can you still hear me? You got a little message on. Okay, awesome. All right. So I created an InfoLink report. It's relatively generic. I'm just going to make sure that it pulls up information. Go to actions, build grid with data, apply selection. All right. I have some. There's a lot of blank records in here. That's totally okay. I'm not worried about it right now. Once you have an InfoLink report, go back into security. The next thing that you need to have set up is going to be an FTP template. And this we're going to get a little nerdy here. So hold on a second here. In security, in workflow configuration, there's a section called FTP template. If you are not familiar with how FTPs work or things like that, I would suggest you not go in here unless you have an IT person with you, or I'm sitting next to you, or I'm doing it for you. For most districts that we work with, I will go ahead and set these up for you. So I'm going to go in here and set up an FTP template. And what an FTP template is, it is a configuration that tells Infinite Visions how to transfer your file from your point A to wherever it needs to go to point B. So if I'm sending a file from myself from Maricopa County over to Agua Fria or to Litchfield or to Alloview or to Talented or any one of those vendors, this is how we're going to set that up. In the FTP template, and I'm going to zoom in here, kind of go through here. The template name, make sure you put the source and the destination on here. That's just sort of naming convention style that we started using. FTP site, you're going to put in the IP address. For Maricopa County hosted districts, we always use the IP address because that's how we configure our firewalls here. Some districts have a domain name that they'll set up, but it has to have a static IP address. It cannot change on it because we have the rule that we're setting up to allow that communication is specific to an IP number, not a domain name. So you're setting up the IP address, the FTP site, and you have to check the box that says SFTP. So this is very, very important. It has to be SFTP, not FTPS. They are two different things that exist and they operate in two different manners. So you have secure file transport protocol and file transfer protocol security. It's kind of stupid that the way that they did it, I don't know why it works that way, but it is SFTP. And it has to do with the program that Infinite Visions uses to transfer those files located. The EXE location, Infinite Visions uses a program called PSFTP in order to do all of its transfers. If you have that in a particular directory, and this has to be on the SQL server. So if you have that in a particular directory, you would put the location of psftp.exe in here. For our purposes, we just put it in the Windows System 32 directory, so it picks it up wherever it happens to be, so that we don't worry about it. The FTP directory, that is the location on the source, on the destination FTP site where you're going to put the file. So when it connects out to this home site, it's going to look for directory upload/test. So that's going to be the file on wherever you're transferring a file. And for anyone that you have a different directory for, you have to set up a new FTP template for. And then of course the user ID and the password given to you for whatever the connection site you're going to. The bad thing about this is that anytime you go in here, it's going to ask you to confirm the password. And I'm pretty forgetful about this, so I try not to go in here and change anything once I set it up the first time. Put the username, password in there, and then everything just kind of works okay. That's the technical mumbo jumbo for it. Once I've set up the FTP template, I'm going to go back into email alerts and jobs. under actions, there's an option to create export job. Take a look at there. All right, so I'm create export job, and it's going to ask you for an info link report. So this is why having info link makes this so much easier. So info link, and I'm going to go to file export one, click OK. So it's going to add an email alert. So that's the cool thing. You can add all the email alerts you want. If you wanted to, or you know that there's an email alert that you will never use for any reason whatsoever, you can actually delete email alerts out of here. I don't know if I would recommend doing that, because like all things, like you think you don't need it now, 2 years from now, someone says, oh yeah, that would have been nice, but somebody deleted that. And then you get the fingers pointed at you. So just try not to delete it unless you know it's garbage or something that you created. So I'm going to go file export one. And I'm going to say, I'm going to send this every day. File name. So most files that we send are going to be comma delimited. So I'm going to put file name is going to be vendors CSV for comma separated values. It really doesn't matter. It's really more important to whoever's receiving the file. You can put whatever you want on there, but CSV is kind of the standard. You can either do comma delimited or tab delimited. Depending on your data is really going to drive what you decide to use that for. If it's anything to do with requisitions or anything to do where people can put in their own notes on stuff, I would try and do comma delimited, because tabs all over those people files. If you've ever exported like invoices or requisitions out to Excel and then wonder why everything was shifted around everywhere, because people are putting tabs in there, and that's kind of screws everything up. So I use comma delimited. The file path, this is the file path on the SQL server. If you don't know what that is, you're going to have to ask your computer nerd for that. Or in more cases, we'll do that for you. So I'm going to say the file path is FTP, master train. That's the path I set up. Success and failure email. It forces you to put these in here. I can tell you they aren't exceptionally useful, but they are required. So I'm going to go ahead and put these in there. There are many times where I've gotten a success email saying a file was done, but that doesn't mean it was successfully transferred. It just means that it was successfully created. Whether or not you want to include a header on the file, now that's going to depend on who you're sending the file to. I would say by default, always include a file header when possible. So I'm going to put that in here. The box to send to FTP, and then the template that you're going to use for that. Select the new one with that. So I'm going to go ahead and save this right here. Before I go any further, I'm going to click OK and kind of save what I got. And then I need to find out where it went. There it is. All right, so now I have my email alert file set up here. If I make this active, since it's in the middle of the day and email alerts are currently running, since I make this active, that means this email alert is going to be kicked off within the next 5 minutes. Works out great if you're testing. It can be kind of troubling if you're trying to testing them. Make sure you get with your IT people. They can help you trying to troubleshoot things as you come across. But I'm going to go ahead and turn this on active. And leave that there. All right. All right. So I'm going to switch over and I'm going to do something really quick. Copy this. All right. So I am going to jump on over to my SQL server and I'll open a directory here. And remember, when we set up that email alert, it asks for a location. This is the location. And if I go into MC Master Train, I can see there's nothing there right now, which is exactly what I see. So I'm going to go back to SQL Management Studio. I'm going to run this. I'm going to sort of run it by hand is what I'm doing. I ran the email alert, coming back into here. Here's my CSV file that was just created. And here's what it looks like. You see all the text on there. Here's the heading name on here. Here's all the text in here. Everything has quotations around it. You can actually take this and import it into other applications, import it into Excel, import it into Access, import it into another database altogether. But this is where you actually get a lot of the flexibility for this. When the email alert runs, it's going to create this file. It will connect to whatever SQL server it is or whatever FTP server is trying to connect to, make that connection, transfer the file, and then you'll get an email alert that it was done. Here's the cool thing about that. Once you've done all that footwork and you've set up things like firewall rules that your network people will need, you've set up the FTP template, you set up have the people set up their FTP site. Once you have everything set up, and if you have InfoLink already, you can use as many of these as you want. You are not limited whatsoever by what we supply, whether at the county or whoever your tech people are. There was an instance where we set up one export file for a district, and then I went to go back and check on them, like 3 months later, and suddenly they had like 6 of them that they actually went in there and they created themselves. They went into InfoLink, they created the file, what they wanted to have in there, they created the export job and pushed it out there. So it's something that can be done. There is some hand-holding needs to be done for the setup. So that's all there is to it. Any questions on how some of that stuff is set up? I know it got kind of deep a little bit. I apologize for that. I don't. How to push the file to just one specific employee. Okay, so there are some email options in here, and that's going to be more with some of the report generation. We've had some issues with that, and we're in the process of looking into it. Just a lot of the stuff with the Tyler stuff kind of fell apart this week. And Jill, you can probably echo this comment. I know Jeff's working on the fixed asset stuff. It's like, oh, suddenly none of the help stuff works anymore. So it makes it very research some of that stuff. And there are templates that you can use in the system. We didn't get into that. It's more of an InfoLink thing, but it is possible. And if we do an InfoLink setup, we will kind of go through that and how those templates happen to work. Good question, Tiffany. Thank you. All right. I think that's going to do it. I hope you guys at least learned a little bit. If you haven't, hopefully you saw an alert that maybe you didn't know was there. If you haven't used alerts, definitely worth jumping on board, turning those things on, getting the most out of there. If you're going in there for the first time or you haven't been in there for a while, just go through and read through the alerts. Like I said, they seem to add new email alerts anytime they do a big quarterly release, sometimes even sooner than that. So there's email alerts in there that have not been in there before. And many of you may not have even known that the direct deposit one was turned on or that the employee profile one was turned on. You may not even know that was running. So just go in there, take a look, poke around. It's harmless. You're not going to hurt anything by going in there. The most you will ever possibly do is just spam somebody with emails until they pick up the phone and decide to give you a call. All right. If there's no other questions, that is all I have for you on email alerts. We are right at about 45 minutes. So again, we made time today. So again, thank you everybody for coming today. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for attending the minEASE sessions. We'll get this uploaded on YouTube next week. So if you want to have sit your IT person down next to you and say, this is something we need to set up, then go ahead and do it. Feel free to reach out to us. We're welcome to help no matter what. We are here for you. Have a great weekend, everybody, and we'll see you next week. Thank you.
Bye, thank you.